And a very happy Monday to you at 12:07 in the West. It's the John Phillips Show, and Randy Wang is across the glass.
John, Antonio Villaraigosa is still running for governor. Antonio Villaraigosa sat down for an hour-long interview at one of our UC campuses to discuss policy and his campaign for governor. And we haven't heard a lot of long-form Antonio Villaraigosa interviews as of yet in this campaign. Tony 2.0 runs out of gas real fast. Here is Antonio Villaraigosa answering a question on why he was one of the only people supporting Prop 36.
I believe in accountability, everybody. People said, well, Mayor, it was safer, it was more violent when you became mayor than it is today. And I said, well, people don't feel that way. The newspaper, the Record said, it's not a solution. I think they said something to the effect, it's not a solution that it was problems.
Oh, my. You know what this reminds me of? The Lakers, at one point, would get these backup centers that were close to 40 years old who had been in the league a very long time. And you need to give your regular center a break. I can't remember if it was Vlade or maybe the initial years of Shaq. But if your center gets in foul trouble, if your center needs a break, you need to be able to bring a 7-footer in. And they'd get these old guys. James Edwards was one of them, where they'd put him down there and he'd be guarding the other team center. And he was so old and so tired by the time the Lakers got him, he was too tired to chase after these guys. So if you threw it to the center, he'd just karate chop him and they'd call a foul.
I think they said something to the effect, it's not a solution that it was problems.
Katie Porter's going to eat your lunch, my good friend.
Oh, can you imagine if those two are on stage together debating and he does that? She's going to jump on top of him like it's a pit bull mauling a chihuahua.
Paul!
I think she'd just tear his head clean off. I don't think it's going to be a body slam or a suplex or anything like that. Nothing technical.
He just completely loses his train of thought. And this is 11 minutes into a 55-minute interview. I can't wait to listen to the whole thing.
How old is he?
That is a really good question because during COVID, it looked like he aged about 100 years.
He sounds like the Pope looks.
All right, what's your guess? How old is Antonio Villaraigosa based on that clip?
79?
72.
Oh. Well, some of us have lived harder lives than others.
I think they said something to the effect, it's not a solution that it was problems.
That's a Jerry Brown level groan.
You know when I do that? When I'm having a conversation with someone where I'm totally checked out and I don't even remember the point I was making because I don't care.
Your next governor, not.
And usually it's also when I'm blowing a point too.
I think they said something to the effect, it's not a solution that it was problems.
That is 3 uhs in a row.
That's borderline Grampy Joe.
If you just read the text of this interview, you wouldn't think it's Antonio. You would think it's Joe.
Deaf people probably think he died.
Got to save this one. Antonio Groan is going into the drops folder.
There you have it, kids. All right. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. One of the things that we play on this program for you on a regular basis is public comment from LA City Hall. We know there are a bunch of regulars who show up and, how should we put this, Randy, perform their act.
It is the America's Got Talent of Los Angeles. You've got the lady that used to scream, sing songs at Kevin De Leon and drop a bunch of F-bombs. You have the man that walks around with a appendage that belongs to the male form and waves it around in the air and then uses a very specific catchphrase every time he waves that thing around in the air. You've got the Chinese guy in the MAGA hat who does karaoke and then tries to use Spanish interpretation to talk about all the hookers on Figueroa. And then you have the guy with the goat puppet who comes every day and actually even comes and brings the goat puppet to committee meetings. And then, of course, you have the people that say utterly racist stuff that even I won't bleep.
So it's basically almost entirely content that is not appropriate for polite company.
Yes, and it's always extra weird when the LA City Council meeting starts with, they invited a third grade class to watch how civics works.
Well, kids, this is going to be quite an education.
We've been on that floor. I still remember that smell. The smell of the LA City Council meeting is a very, very, very specific smell.
Well, because you have all the politicians on one side, and then you have essentially a homeless encampment on the other. All in the same room.
But this is how democracy works. These are citizens of the public, and they are making their voice heard, which is their right.
I don't think so, though, because if you go to the smaller cities, those meetings are not like this.
They also have them at night, which means a lot more people can attend that actually have something important to say, because the LA City Council has meetings when everyone who has something important to do is at work.
I'm trying to think of other public forums where you can't swear. A lot of colleges and universities have public radio stations, for example. If you were to call in and say those things on those airwaves, they would cut you off.
You can't say those words on this radio station.
No, you can't. Some of you have tried, but we've caught you all.
That's why our dump is now 60 seconds. Back in the olden days, when the dump was only about 7 or 8 seconds, my old buddy Jason in Sulaco used to prank call Meryl Schindler on KABC and would try to curse so many words that the dump wouldn't be able to cover it.
How did Meryl react to that?
Oh.
That's pretty much what I thought. All right. So now the city council is trying to clean up the language because they say it's too vulgar, too vile, and they want everyone to put a bar of soap in their mouth.
Specifically, the new council president, Marquise Harris Dawson, wants to put forth a motion that would ban people at public comment from saying two very specific words that I cannot say.
Both quite incendiary, as they say.
Let's find out what's going on here. KTLA talked to the West Side Current reporter who broke this story. Here's KTLA.
This week, LA City Council President Marquise Harris Dawson announced plans to...
Wait, hold on. I got to fix the sample ratio on this so I don't break the computer.
By the way, he is the first person I've ever heard of named Marquise. Have you ever heard of any Marquise before?
He's the first.
What name do you think he gives him at Starbucks? I ever tell you I have a friend who goes into Starbucks with a fake Eurotrash accent? And they say, "What's your name, sir?" And he goes, "My name is Rapé. R-A-P-E. Rapé." And so they write it on the cup, and it's a different person who has to call you when your drink is ready. And they didn't hear the fake Eurotrash pronunciation, and they take one look at the cup, and they don't know what to do.
Is this a cry for help?
I don't know, but it's funny.
This week, LA City Council President Marquise Harris Dawson announced plans to crack down on vile slurs during public comment at council meetings.
Do you think this is going to tell the gadflys less swearing or more swearing?
Well, now that he's established the rules, they're going to use every bad word other than those two.
Like, let's not forget, you can ban everything that you want at LA City Hall. They don't really kick people out. They just kindly beg them to leave over and over and over again.
And they do the play-by-play.
meetings.
West Side Current reporter John Regardi broke that story, actually. And today, Regardi spoke with our own Sandra Mitchell. Take a look.
John, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Sandra.
Yeah, for anybody who's been at an LA City Council meeting, you know that things can get disruptive very quickly. So
It's pretty much the whole meeting.
That's a kind way of putting it.
And when Kevin De Leon was on there was about a good portion of a year and a half where every single person speaking would end what they were saying with F Kevin De Leon.
Yeah, it sounds like a Red Fox album.
Quite frankly,
you've had some conversations with the council president, Harris Dawson. Why does he think it's important to make this change, and why now?
well, Marquise Harris Dawson is really trying to make a more habitable, more civic environment, as you referenced.
Let's not forget all the crap that goes on after public comment. This is not a civic environment.
No, what the council does behind closed doors is profane too, just in a different way.
As you referenced, yes, it can be pretty dodgy in there. We frequently hear two of the most vile words that you could come up with.
Which two?
You think I'm dumb enough to repeat them? My mama didn't raise no fool.
Vile words that you could come up with, along with, F-bombs, some other language. So what he's going to try to do is really introduce this motion that will restrict the use of this language. Essentially, the council president would have.
This is not going to keep the gadflies at bay.
Oh, no. You create better mousetraps, you end up with smarter mice.
The use of this language, essentially.
I'll tell you, one of the tricks they do, and it's really, really funny, is if you ask for a Spanish language interpreter and then you say all of those horrible words in Spanish, the interpreter will have to say them out loud.
In English?
Yes.
The use of this language. Essentially, the council president would have the authority, if these words were uttered, to.
And this is, of course, just the next action in Marquise's long strain of eliminating public comment entirely. Let's not forget, when Marquise started, he ended all of the phone public commenting because he was so sick of Jason at Smoking Skin talking about the girls on Figueroa.
He'd get through every week.
And we could never actually air you the things that he said after Figueroa.
No, we can't.
I learned a lot of things in those meetings.
Yes, you did, particularly about the female anatomy.
Warn someone once. If they try it a second time, their time.
Wait, so the first thing is, if you drop one of the worst words that you could possibly say at LA City Hall directed at an LA City Council member or anybody, you're going to get a Janice on.
That's your final warning.
Okay, like this is going to stop them?
Their time would be terminated. They would not be allowed to speak anymore.
All right, we hear so much about.
And what? Then they can scream off mic until you kindly ask them to leave over and over again?
And then they come back and do it again the next day.
All right, we hear so much about free speech, but for somebody who has not been at an LA City Council meeting, not experienced this, not seen the video of what goes on, how would you describe that scene, and how has it been changing over the past few years?
How long do you have, baby?
To hear this answer.
Sandra, it's really disconcerting. I went back and watched some of the tape in preparation for this story for the West Side Current. You do not feel good about the city of Los Angeles when you see this happening. And
which guy offended you? Was it the guy who does the Speedy Gonzalez accent?
I love that he's taking it so seriously, too.
The center of our government, which should be our civic structure.
I mean, let's not forget, the people behind that hallowed horseshoe are the most ridiculous people in the city.
Yeah, okay, so fine. It's a circus. The clowns are out in the bleachers, and they're the ones at the podium. Well, the people who are elected to office are getting shot out of cannons themselves. So what's the difference?
The center of our government, which should be our civic structure. There are repeated curse words. There are, again, vile words directed at African-American council members, at female council members. You'll hear terms directed at people of Jewish or Latino descent, many expletives.
Hey, they go after the Armenians, too. It's an equal opportunity offense.
No one escapes their wrath.
Will fly. It is the type of place, and it was said to me by many people, that, a teacher would not want to bring their class of young students down.
Who is bringing their students to LA City Hall for a field trip? What exactly are they going to learn outside of the real life?
Oh, I believe a young John Phillips and a young Randy Wang would have enjoyed a field trip to LA City Hall to witness that.
They would have had a whole bunch of words added to their vocabulary. We're just getting started with this piece, Johnny. We're going to find out more of why Marquise wants to ban a few specific words from LA City Hall.
Coming up later on in the program, we'll be joined by Barbara Stone, and Jennifer Van Laar has a new story, a bombshell story about the fake doctor that she will be breaking on these airwaves at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Next slide.
Just so you know, we start in San Francisco on the 1st of April. So I have to get out of the habit of saying Talk Radio 790 KABC. I have to get out of the habit of throwing it to KABC Dependable Traffic. I have to get out of the habit of saying 800-222 KABC. And it's going to be a process.
I mean, you've been doing these things for about 20 years.
Yes. So I'm like a smoker who's trying to fix his oral fixation with carrots. So if I just randomly state the date at times, if I start to speak and I stop myself and you can tell I'm turning the microphone off and cursing at myself, you know the reason why.
This is why we're starting it today and not next Tuesday.
We're practicing and I'm doing the best I can. That's all I can say. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Susan writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Governor Viller, John and Randy, who even remembered Tony V was running for governor? Apparently he forgot too, but whenever he pops up, he's always comedy gold.
And Randy, if you were to go back and listen to past episodes where we talked about Antonio Villaraigosa, that is easy to do.
Just search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts, and you'll see every episode of the show.
In the meantime, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
790 KABC welcomes Ricky Gervais, the Mortality Tour at the Hollywood Bowl on May 31st. Tickets on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. But right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Live Nation. Good luck dialing.
Right now, we're going through the latest over at LA City Hall, where Council President Marquise Harris Dawson wants everyone to clean up their language.
He wants to ban 2 very specific, very naughty words that I can't say on the radio.
No, you can't.
You know, a teacher would not want to bring their class of young students down to observe democracy because of what they would hear.
You're not observing democracy at LA City Hall. You're observing incompetence and corruption.
No, they draw the district, so they get the district they want. They make all the big decisions behind closed doors, and it's basically the unions and developers that call all the shots.
How long has it been since we've had an LA City Council where at least one member wasn't under some kind of active investigation or indictment? Curran Price is on trial right now, and he's still serving.
Didn't he just get a delay?
Yes. On his bigamy trial.
All right, so this is a very narrow focus. We're talking about 2 specific words, which we are not going to mention. But why does the council president...
I think we know which 2.
Oh, yeah.
But why does the council president... why is he focused on these 2 words, and what do you think the road ahead looks like?
Yeah, isn't this very specific? What about all the slurs for all the other races and genders?
Okay, wait a minute. Just so we're clear, one of the words starts with an N, correct?
Yes.
And the other one starts with a C?
Yes.
Okay.
You can do the alphabet, I'm sure. But I'm just saying, there are other words, usually by the same one guy who he hates the most, that are said that I would put on par as being as offensive as those.
Those 2 are pretty nuclear, though.
You know, that's a great question, Sandra, and it's really strategic.
And to be fair, I do listen to a lot of these city council meetings. I don't hear the C that often. I hear the N a lot. I don't hear the C.
Okay.
I hear the K a lot. That's a pretty offensive one.
Yeah, I'd say so.
You know, that's a great question, Sandra, and it's really strategic. When we were speaking for this West Side Current article, he was very specific in pointing out that this is going to be what he considers a beginning. I said, do you consider this baby steps? He said, absolutely.
Well, what words are you going to ban next year, Marquise?
Well, you know what you're going to get now. The speakers are going to use nothing but those two words.
And you know this is going to invite several First Amendment lawsuits.
Oh, I'm sure.
In fact, part of the reason why LA City Council public comment is so insane to begin with is the city of Los Angeles has tried to go down this road before and has lost in court.
Okay, why do they lose and every other little city can make sure that people behave like adults? But not in LA City. In LA City, it's a zoo and a circus. And everywhere else, it's what you would expect.
Yeah, typically city council meetings are full of old cranks. Not in L.A.
It's people saying, I think that there should be a stoplight at such and such boulevard because the cars are going too fast and there are too many accidents. And if you try to cross the street, you're going to get run over. So let's put a stoplight there.
I said, do you consider this baby steps? He said, absolutely. Said it again. Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Oh, he's one of those, too.
Marquise, I'm going to start actually watching Spectrum so I can see you get interviewed.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I don't have the time in my life to keep listening to everybody's stupid podcast, but Marquise has a podcast now.
Oh, you got to be kidding me.
It's on civic engagement.
I see.
And I can't keep adding these to my life. I already got to listen to two different Gavin podcasts, the one where he talks to Republicans and the one where he talks to Marshawn. I got to listen to Mike Bonin's podcast. I got enough.
And then you got Pamela Price.
I do enjoy the Pamela Price podcast. I mean, who are we kidding?
I've been bipped several times.
That podcast is drama.
She might win a Marconi.
They are starting with this because they are trying to be sure that they are within legal boundaries. The reason Los Angeles is in this situation is they've lost cases in the past. There have had to be payouts. So they've been...
Oh, yeah. You know how part of the reason the city of Los Angeles is in a $1 billion budget deficit is they only budgeted $100 million in liability payouts last year, and they had $300 million? Let's invite even more lawsuits.
I love the fact that you could get kicked off Twitter if you link to a correct story from the New York Post about Hunter Biden's laptop. Yet, if you go in front of the Los Angeles City Council and you drop the N-bomb and the C word, you can do that without anyone telling you to shush.
Yeah.
We might end up making the goat puppet guy a very rich man.
We might.
Chinese karaoke guy? He might be able to open his own karaoke bar.
Curry karaoke?
Spicy karaoke? Oh, well, now I got to pull that up. It's one of my favorite drops. It's been a really good month for drops, especially with Pammy Price, but this one's a classic.
Spicy karaoke.
They've been working, the council president, with the city attorney, with other people in the legal sector on what they think very specifically affects not so much free speech, but governance.
You know, today it's banning certain very, very, very offensive slurs. Tomorrow, they're going to ban people from talking about the ladies on Figueroa, which happens to be in Marquise's district.
What's weird is there's absolutely no rhyme or reason to this. You will get canceled if you do not believe that biological men should play in women's sports. Yet this is totally permitted and celebrated.
Very specifically affects not so much free speech, but governance, the ability to conduct a meeting. And they believe that focusing specifically on these two words allows them to withstand legal muster. And if things proceed as they hoped, it will be the beginning of perhaps expanding to some other word, another language.
They don't realize how many people on every side of the aisle hate them and how many people will show up at LA City Hall just to now say those words so they can get kicked out.
Yeah, you're 100% right. If it was just outraged citizens who were upset at the level of service that we receive for our tax dollars, just imagine if that hall was packed with homeowners from Pacific Palisades who are angry at what the city did in response to that fire. You think that makes them look any better? In a weird sort of way, the gadflys who just use it as an opportunity to get on Channel 35 prevent the normal people from showing up and airing their grievances, which would make them look even worse.
Yes.
You might actually have some real public comments in the public comment section instead of the circus of the stars.
No kidding.
Yeah, it sounds like Harris Dawson has some pretty good intentions, right? He wants to bring civility back to the city council meetings, but...
Yeah, let's try that after Ulysses gets voted out. Because I don't know exactly how we can talk about civility when Ulysses, who's on the other side of the horseshoe, keeps talking about want to throw down with everyone.
Yeah, she doesn't use the Queen's English, does she?
How dare you?
Tracy Park, I was ready to throw down with you on your bill. I don't know why you didn't want to throw down with us. She's a class act.
Yes, she is.
And then, of course, are we going to start banning Imelda Padilla from talking about her constituents?
The neighborhood kids, the down-ass kids don't like it.
Yeah, once you start cleaning up everyone's language, you're going down, well, you're a drunk man going down an icy road.
You mentioned First Amendment rights. You mentioned free speech. How far can we go with this?
And that's also one of the really interesting aspects. And the city council president is no stranger to this. In fact, when I said to him, this sounds like something that's going to end up in court, he said, I want this to end up in court. I was surprised by that. But he went on to tell me that, he wants to go before a judge and have play a video for the judge, say, this is what happens. Is this really what the First Amendment, what the Brown Act, which regulates free speech in California, where are we going? Is this going to be allowed? So,
the problem is free speech literally is supposed to protect the speech you don't like. It doesn't matter how offensive it is.
And the truth be told, the answer to this is probably to break up the city of Los Angeles. The city of Los Angeles is too big. It makes no sense to have Granada Hills in the same city as San Pedro. And if you break it down into smaller cities, then you can have normal meetings where people show up to talk about normal subjects. But if you have a huge city where it could be literally an hour and a half commute from your house to LA City Hall, no one normal is going to take time out of their schedule to do that so they can address the council on a subject that the council won't even pay attention to.
Well, and let's not forget, they schedule these meetings at 10 o'clock in the morning on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So their audience is almost exclusively of union members who are there to protest something very specific, or the homeless and the insane.
Don't forget, whenever you have a race like for governor in California or U.S. Senate in California, when is it that the Democratic candidate, who always wins, schedules the debate? They schedule it exclusively on a public radio station in the middle of nowhere at 10 in the morning on a workday. And they do that because they don't want to make headlines. They don't want you to hear what they have to say or what their opponent has to say. They want to be able to say that they did it and it's over and it's done with and no one saw it or heard it. Because when you believe that you are bulletproof, when you believe that you are unbeatable, when you believe that no one is ever going to take the power from you, you don't want to have a debate about ideas because then your record will be put in the public forum and you'll have to defend the decisions that you've made and you'll have to defend the conditions of your city or your state. And in many cases, that's not a good look. So they rather have it be a circus or they rather have it be in a place that people just say, okay, that's a nut house. I'm not going to pay attention to that. And then they just disengage. Well, if the public just disengages, then you can do whatever you want if you're in the room where the decisions are made. They love this.
Well, this is how you get to a level of disengagement where 20,000 people vote in a city council primary, and this is how you get the most extreme voices in the room to win city council seats like Ulysses.
No!
And if you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Roger writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Don't worry, Johnny. It took John Cobalt from KFI quite a while to stop saying the John and Ken show. And he'll still slip every now and then.
Oh, I'll do it for months, if not years. What was the last one that we worked on that took me forever to do? The phone number?
Yeah, we because we started broadcasting the Fix California Hour up in San Francisco, and I didn't want to have to manually edit out the phone number every time we went to the phones. I told you to stop saying 800-222-KABC, and you got it down. You don't do it anymore, but that's why we're starting this today.
You know, I'll tell you, trying to get me to change anything is just a real chore. Having me do anything involving technology, bigger chore. This morning, I was emailing travel information, and for some reason, I put my Cumulus password in the text of the document. And I get an email back, did you mean to put your Cumulus password in this email about a trip to St. Thomas?
It's really surprising that you're able to even get up in the morning sometimes.
And Randy, you're sitting in there giggling all through the breaks.
Well, Antonio Villaraigosa sat down for an hour. And let me tell you exactly where this was, because I've only listened to the first 15 minutes of it, and every single time I keep laughing out loud. It was at a UC Student and Policy Center's California Leaders Speaker Series. And Antonio thought the interview went so well, he posted it on his campaign account, Antonio for California. And there are some times where Antonio Villaraigosa makes some very good points, but boy, does he sound like a cantankerous old man now.
The 4 candidates who were in back in September all said, therefore, single payer. Single payer has a $550 billion price tag to it, everybody. Our budget is $300 billion. They're smoking pot, man.
Well, he wants to connect with the college kids.
They're smoking pot, man.
He's trying to position himself. He's doing exactly what Gavin's doing. You notice this? He's trying to position himself as a centrist Democrat because he believes that the party brand is toxic right now.
But how exactly does that work in a primary in California with a top 2 system where you have the most outrageous on the left promote the most outrageous on the right to be the top 2 contenders?
Well, I think that his spirit animal is Jerry Brown. He's trying to be Jerry Brown in 2010. Because don't forget, before Jerry Brown got in, it was supposed to be Antonio versus Gavin. And then Gavin switched and ran for lieutenant governor, and Tony V sold Herbalife.
You know, you might have a point here, because Tony V is starting to sound a whole lot like Jerry Brown.
Yeah, Jerry Brown was a politician we all knew who went away into the wilderness for years and then came back and was elected governor. And that's what Tony V would need, too.
But to do that, he's going to have to go after Katie Porter.
And that is just going to be vicious.
Watch out for the mashed potatoes, buddy. They're going to be flying.
No!
Get that man some gravy.